The sun was setting, casting long shadows over a quiet street, but on the corner stood a boy, barefoot, shaking, clutching a crumpled dollar bill. His eyes darted nervously as he watched the sleek black car pull up. Inside, a man, dressed in a tailored suit, was oblivious to the desperate plea forming in the boy's heart. "I swear I'll pay you when I grow up," he whispered, voice trembling. But the man didn't hear. No one ever did. And as he turned away, the boy's words hung in the air, unanswered. What would it take for this boy to finally be seen, Jaden's? Life wasn't easy, but it was his. His little world filled with the comforting sounds of his sister's laughter and the smell of his mother's cooking. He lived in a small, run-down apartment on the edge of town, the kind of place where hope seemed to fade into the cracks of the walls. But to Jaden, it was home. Every day after school, he would rush to the corner store, a ritual he'd grown to love. The store owner, Mr. Carter, always gave him a wink and a few words of encouragement. At just 11, Jaden had already learned the harsh realities of the world around him. He saw the stares as he walked through the neighborhood, the way people would cross the street when they saw him coming, as if his skin color alone was a warning. His friends were few, but those he had were close, especially his younger sister Ava. She was everything to him. He'd do anything for her. But things were starting to change. His mom, who worked 2 jobs, seemed more worn out every day. She barely had time to make dinner, let alone play with them. And lately it was harder and harder to find the milk Ava needed. Jaden had no idea how he was going to fix it, but he knew in the pit of his stomach that something big was coming. What Jaden didn't know yet was that his next step, the one he was about to take, would change everything. But would anyone listen to him when it mattered most? Jaden's feet dragged as he walked to the corner store, the weight of the day pressing down on him. Ava hadn't stopped crying for hours, her stomach growling with hunger. He'd searched every corner of the apartment for spare change, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly. The milk, just a small carton, was the only thing that could calm her down, but Jaden had nothing left to give. The store bell chimed as he stepped inside. Mr. Carter, who always had a kind smile for him, was busy stocking shelves. Jaden hesitated, the lump in his throat growing larger. The fear of rejection swelled, but he couldn't leave without at least asking. He had to try. "Mr. Carter," Jaden began, his voice shaky, "do you have any milk? I don't have enough money, but I'll bring the rest tomorrow." "I promise." Mr. Carter glanced up, eyes narrowing as he wiped his hands on his apron. The store was almost empty, and Jaden noticed the way Mr. Carter's gaze lingered on him. It wasn't the usual friendly look. There was something cold about it, something different. "I'm sorry, Jaden," Mr. Carter said, his voice tight, almost dismissive. "But we're out of milk. Try next week." Jaden blinked, stunned. Out of milk? They always had it, even when everything else was bare. The realization hit him hard. Mr. Carter had always been kind, but today was different. Today, the door to possibility was shut in his face. He didn't want to believe it, but something inside him felt like he already knew. "Please," Jaden pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. "Just a little. Ava, she needs it." Mr. Carter looked away, avoiding his eyes. "I said no, Jaden. I can't help you this time. It's not my problem." Jaden's heart thudded in his chest, the sting of those words burning like a slap. It wasn't just the milk. It was the way Mr. Carter said it, as if he wasn't even worth the effort of a simple favor. The familiar sting of racism that Jaden had long been taught to ignore was creeping back, a reality he couldn't escape. He stood there, frozen for a moment before he turned and walked out, his face burning with a mixture of humiliation and fury. He didn't know where to go, but he couldn't go back to that apartment empty-handed. Ava would be waiting, and he couldn't fail her. As he walked down the street, the world around him seemed to close in. The hum of the city became a muffled noise, drowning out everything but the pounding in his chest. The injustice of it all sat heavy on his shoulders. Mr. Carter had always been there, always offered a kind word when times were tough. But today, it felt as though Jaden's very existence had been too much for him to bear. He passed the brightly lit windows of other stores, each filled with goods he couldn't afford. His stomach churned as he saw families walking past, laughing together. They were so different from him. Just ahead, Jaden spotted a familiar figure, Mr. Jacobs, a wealthy businessman in the neighborhood. He always drove the nicest cars, wore the finest suits. Jaden had seen him 100 times before. The man had never once acknowledged him, never looked his way. But today, as Jaden passed, something strange happened. Mr. Jacobs locked eyes with him. There was no nod, no smile, just cold indifference. Jaden's heart skipped a beat. That look, it wasn't the first time he'd seen it. The way Mr. Jacobs looked at him, like he was a ghost, like he wasn't even human. Jaden stopped in his tracks, his mind racing. Was this how the world saw him? Was he just a shadow, ignored and unseen by the very people who controlled his fate? Before he could process his thoughts, Mr. Jacobs turned away, stepping into his car without a second glance. Jaden felt a deep knot in his stomach, a feeling he couldn't shake. And as he looked back at the store, knowing he couldn't go back inside, the weight of the world pressed even harder on his shoulders. Where could he turn to now? Who would see him? Jaden's feet carried him, almost instinctively, to the most unexpected place, the steps of a towering, pristine mansion at the edge of town. It belonged to the millionaire businessman, Mr. Harrison. He had seen the man from a distance before. Power, wealth, and privilege etched in every aspect of his life. But today, Jaden was desperate. He didn't know why he thought it would work, but he had to try. The cold stone beneath his feet seemed to match the chill creeping up his spine as he stood at the gates. He was just a boy, no more than a stranger on the street, but his sister needed him. Ava was hungry. Jaden had to do something, anything. So, with shaking hands, he stepped forward and rang the doorbell. Seconds passed before the door opened, revealing Mr. Harrison in his expensive suit. His cold eyes scanned Jaden, his gaze lingering on the boy's ragged clothes. For a moment, Jaden froze, the words trapped in his throat. He had no idea what to say. How do you ask for something when the world has already written you off? I just need some milk. My sister. She needs it. I don't have enough money, but I'll come back tomorrow, I promise. I swear. I'll pay you when I grow up. Jaden's voice cracked as he spoke, every syllable an effort. The words hung in the air, raw and desperate. Mr. Harrison's eyes narrowed as he looked down at the boy. There was a silence, so thick, so heavy it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then, without a word, Mr. Harrison's lips twisted into a mocking smile. You think you can just come here and ask for milk? You're not even worth the time, he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Jaden's heart shattered, the walls he'd built for himself suddenly crumbling. The injustice of it hit him like a tidal wave, his chest tightening as anger and fear collided within him. He had been nothing more than a pawn in a system that never saw him, never cared. In that moment, all the years of rejection, of being overlooked, flooded back. He wasn't just asking for milk, he was asking for humanity, and just as Jaden turned to leave, humiliated, defeated, a voice cut through the tension. Wait. It was faint, but enough to make him freeze in his tracks. Jaden turned slowly, heart racing, his breath shallow. The weight of Mr. Harrison's words still hung in the air, suffocating him. But then, a hand landed gently on his shoulder. Jaden looked up to see the old woman who lived next door, Mrs. Carter. She had watched him from her window, and the look in her eyes told him she had seen it all. Her voice was soft but firm. You don't have to carry this alone, boy. We're all here. I'll make sure Ava gets what she needs. You've got more people on your side than you think." Jaden felt something shift within him. A sense of hope, something he hadn't felt in a long time, washed over him. It wasn't a grand gesture or a magical solution, but in that moment, it was enough. Mrs. Carter had seen him. She had looked past the color of his skin, past the poverty that defined him in so many eyes, and she saw his worth. She saw him as human. In the days that followed, Jaden's small act of asking for help ignited something greater. The neighborhood rallied around him. What started with one person, an old woman with a kind heart, became a movement. Mr. Harrison's indifference was nothing compared to the outpouring of support Jaden found from people who refused to be silent. They showed him what real strength looked like, not in wealth or status, but in compassion, in standing together against the wrongs that had long been ignored. The event changed Jaden, but it also changed the people around him. It opened eyes to the realities of racial injustice, and it reminded everyone that silence is a choice, one that perpetuates inequality. But speaking up has the power to shatter those walls, to break the chains of apathy that bind us. And so, Jaden's story doesn't end with him walking away from that mansion, humiliated. It ends with us, right here, right now. What will we do when we see injustice? Will we turn away,